2024 was an incredible year for manga. Kagurabachi came out swinging and consistently delivers peak every week. Hunter x Hunter came back from hiatus to deliver 10 weeks of nothing but the series flying as high as it always does. One Piece stormed through Egghead and is onwards towards Elbaf. My Dress Up Darling overcame a bit of a stumble, but it in turn gave us some of the best the series has had to offer. Skip and Loafer continued to give us one of the most nuanced teenage relationships out there. My Hero Academia and Jujutsu Kaisen ended and left fans feeling all sorts of ways, for better or worse. And the list goes on and on. But with 2024 behind us, I wanted to highlight my favorite manga chapter of 2024. My spoiler warning here is a fun one where I just have a few that aren't on here. Just to kind of keep things interesting, I'm only going to talk about our podium placing ones, bronze, silver, gold. But everything is included as a sort of mini reading list for those who want to read some peak manga. It's also just my top 10 chapters of 2024, so take that as you will. Except, I'm excluding Hunter x Hunter because I already made a video on that, and if it was here it would just be every slot. So, for the sake of fairness and an interesting video, go watch that video. It's great. I love Hunter x Hunter so much. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into third place.
I am the bone of my soul, unknown to death.
Kagurabachi stormed into Weekly Shonen Jump with a blazing confidence and proceeded to deliver some of the coolest chapters in Weekly Shonen Jump lately. There were so many chapters that were just raw coolness or great character moments, and narrowing it down to just one was hard. The Soiwo fight was one that was so cool and such a great use of two people going at it at their full force. The auction arc had so many moments that could have taken the top spot, but ultimately it was chapter 53 of Kagurabachi that had me speechless at the amount of raw on display. Okuzono was so incredibly versed in using the black and white contrast of a manga, and it is on full display in chapter 53. Okuhiro embracing the darkness in him and using that to drag the Hishaku to hell with him is so unbelievably cool. It's such a simple line that probably should feel pretty cringe, but pairing it with the art and just seeing Rokuhiro covered in blood paint and black is just so simple but the coolest thing ever, and some excellent visual storytelling. And then there's the full page spread on page 20 and 21, which is an incredible use of subtraction to highlight a scene despite it basically being a page comprised entirely of black, or in this case it's mostly meant to be blood. Kagurabachi as a whole has set up a really interesting conversation in regards to the sword bearers that I'm genuinely so interested in how he's going to unravel the dark depths of this world that are boiling underneath the surface. Kagurabachi's consistently surprised me with just how cool it can be, but in 2024, chapter 53 was the highlight. To go in a completely different direction, chapter 107 of My Dress Up Darling had me smiling from ear to ear by the end. A year of friction chapters was rewarded with a confession chapter that was everything I could have wanted and more. There's just something about confession chapters that just hits different, and My Dress Up Darling is no exception. The catharsis for all the build-up was the greatest thing to read after a year of hit-or-miss chapters throughout 2024. Chapter 99 would have also entered contention, but it was released at the tail end of 2023. But honestly, I just love the positivity present in My Dress Up Darling, and to finally let Marin gush about how much she loves Gojo was so fulfilling. It's the most over-the-top response to being confessed to, but I'd expect nothing less from Marin Kitagawa. It's hard to say where My Dress Up Darling goes from here, but just having the main couple together is enough for me. Before we reach the number one spot, I want to highlight my favorite manga chapter that was not released in 2024. I read a metric ton of manga in 2024, and I want to highlight a series that I already talked about on the channel, but deserve to be mentioned once again. Chapter 23 of Tokyo These Days is one of the best manga chapters I've ever read. Shosaku's journey throughout this chapter is one of the most resonant depictions of the artistic process I have ever seen in any art, really ever. The struggle to find something to create feels so disheartening. The air ends up stale around Shosaku, but then when he reaches the scene in the rain. In my prior video, I talked about how excellent Tokyo These Days is at telling a rich story purely through the art, and here is yet another stellar example. You can feel inspiration strike him in the heat of the moment as he rushes home to let out that burst of creativity that's compelling him. The panel of him hunched over drawing soaking wet is such a great image of when that overwhelming urge to get an idea out strikes. It's the purest expression of the artistic process, complete with both the highs and the lows, and finishing the chapter left me with this overwhelming urge for myself to get creating something, which is as good an example as any to the power of art. But Tokyo These Days did not come out in 2024. Our the first place manga chapter of 2024 snuck in at the 11th hour, but moved me infinitely more than I could have ever expected. I enjoy reading One Piece weekly. It's one that I tune in to several people to listen to their reactions to the story as well, but usually my reaction is a little more dialed back than theirs. However, chapter 1133 of One Piece was a chapter where it felt like everyone who caught up to One Piece were just caught by Oda and his gambit to make the ugliest crying ever come out. To be honest, I didn't know One Piece was capable of making me cry as much as it did. It's been so long since I read Nico Robin's backstory chapters, but the build-up and execution of the chapter was just incredible. It built up even more empathy for Nico Robin as we see a child struggling to survive amidst a world that wants her dead and wants to erase her entire history. She spent her life alone and has gone through more than anyone else should have to. Her reunion with Saul was beautiful. She deserved that catharsis so much, and to see their happy reunion had me bawling my eyes out and is making my eyes water as I'm writing this section of the script. It's a chapter that gives so much on the surface level, but becomes even more emotional when you sit and reflect on Nico Robin's journey. To see her happy with the Straw Hat crew after all those years of suffering made me cry even more after I thought I was finally free from all the tears. She deserves the world, and I have nothing but happiness in my heart for her finally finding the happiness that she deserves so much. Everyone deserves to be happy, and someone like Nico Robin has earned it a million times over. Genuinely an all-timer manga chapter in general, and far and away my favorite manga chapter of 2024. Now, for those of you who are wondering where the final chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia are, well, My Hero Academia takes the 4th place spot, and the final chapter of JJK does not place in the top 10. JJK chapter 265 does though, because it's such a phenomenal chapter that gives a stellar progression to Yuji's character arc while also shining more light on Sukuna in a way that takes away all the power scaling to an extent and just cuts right to the heart of what makes Jujutsu Kaisen so good. The final chapter I liked, but as many people have said, I would have liked a little more. I'm waiting on the extra chapters to be translated so I can see if that changes anything. It was still good though, don't get me wrong, just not a top 10 chapter. And with that, we shall see what 2025 will have in store for us. I'm sure we'll have more incredible One Piece chapters. Chainsaw Man's probably going to do something even crazier than it already has. And I'm sure Skip and Loafer is going to continue to impress me every time it drops. But who knows, maybe a new manga will appear and take the world by storm like Kagurabachi did. I'm eagerly awaiting to see what the future holds, and I will be back next year to do this again, so subscribe for that and many other videos throughout the year of 2025.